I want to bring something to your attention that many of us may not have realized. The House of Representatives just came back in session this week. Before you start beating up on Democrats, they're the minority, and the schedule is in the hands of Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who's a Republican. Um, Take a look at this clip, though, of Jasmine Crockett.
Let me make sure that I get this timeline together for the American people. Number one, he was sworn in on January 20th. That was on a Monday. We were supposed to be in session from Tuesday to Friday of that week. They canceled our Friday votes. So we have only been in session Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week that he was sworn in. No other days. They decided to take advantage of the fact that Congress was not in and started to unravel and break as many things in our democracy as they could without us being here. But I can tell you that even when we went through the CR vote, there were Republicans that silently or in the background were cheering us on and saying this is wrong. Like they knew we had negotiated, and all of a sudden this guy who's not elected makes a tweet on Twitter. And so, no, can I tell you that Republicans want to see Elon go down? I can. Now, will they come out publicly and say that? No, because they're concerned about whether or not he'll spend money in their next elections.
Yeah, that's about the state of things right now. Silently and behind the scenes, Republicans have been supportive of Democratic efforts to stop this insanity, but they're not going to do anything about it. Just in case you were wondering. And just in case you were wondering if there are any Republicans who are not completely in leadership positions, who are not completely in cahoots with the Trump regime, we can put those to rest as well. So, of course, while Donald and his enablers spent the last week gutting the government, the House of Representatives was in what they call a district work period. In other words, back home, not in DC, where all of the action was happening, meeting with their constituents and staff in their home states. That, of course, is by design, as Representative Crockett of Democrat of Texas pointed out. While they were out of the Capitol, Donald was free to steamroll the Constitution with the not inconsiderable help of the unelected, illegitimate, unauthorized Elon Musk, dishing out executive orders, purging federal workers, and throwing over the keys of the American Treasury to Elon Musk. Before we dive into the rest of this, please take a second to like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. And after you subscribe, click on that bell because you will be assured then of getting alerted every time a new video drops. Thank you for listening to our new podcast, which is available everywhere. Follow us here and please give us a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. After a week of congressional inaction, because Congress was not in session and allowed to act, the House of Representatives is finally back in session, and Democrats are wasting no time pushing back against Donald's attempt to gut federal agencies and consolidate power. Quote, there's a tipping point where bipartisan cooperation becomes an overwhelming negative for us, unquote. This is what a Democratic staffer told Punchbowl News. Some Democrats aren't just making statements, they're showing up in person to confront the corruption face to face. On Wednesday, Representatives Judy Chu and Gwen Moore walked straight into Speaker Mike Johnson's office and demanded answers about Musk's access to the United States Treasury Department payment systems, which should alarm any sane person who cares about the future of this country and the present of American citizens. Sadly, Speaker Mike Johnson is not among those who gives a shit. Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency now has a read-only access to trillions of dollars in payments, including Social Security checks and tax refunds. And while the Treasury claims that no payments are being delayed yet, that would be the operative word in that phrase, Musk has already made moves to freeze funds for Head Start programs and, of course, USAID, which we've spoken about frequently here. The confrontation happened just as Treasury Secretary, the absolutely sycophantic Scott Bessent, arrived at the Speaker's office to discuss implementing Donald's tax agenda, because of course he did. Anyway, meanwhile, we have Russell Vought, who is Donald's pick to lead the Office of Management and Budget, who's been spearheading efforts to block Congress from exercising its control over federal spending, instead centralizing power within the executive branch, which is illegal and unconstitutional. His proposed budget impoundments would allow Donald unilaterally to cut funding from government agencies without congressional approval, something even some Republicans are wary of. Why? Because it's illegal, unconstitutional, and essentially puts them out of a job, which is apparently the only thing they care about. Just as a quick reminder, Vogt is the guy who was behind Project 2025. He must be delighted. Here is Senator Brian Schatz, a Democrat of Hawaii, walking us through some of this.
He also basically views laws as optional. We pass an appropriations bill, and then he thinks that he gets to just say, well, Donald Trump doesn't like it, so we're going to shutter that agency. Look, if you don't like a particular part of the federal government, there is a way to change the federal government, and it's through your elected representatives in Congress. And I don't mean to be so fussy about these kinds of things, but this is the American system of democracy. So there's two problems with Russ Vogt. One is that what he proposes to do and what they have already done is illegal. And the other is that what they are doing is already harming people across the country.
Fussy? Okay. Please dispense with such language. You're not being fussy. You're standing up for the rule of law and the future of American democracy. Let's pick a better word. Anyway, with such drastic overreach, Democrats are taking a hard line, as they should. One Democratic strategist told New York Magazine, quote, "Before we provide a single vote Republicans need, Musk and Vogt must be put on a leash," unquote. Well, I would suggest that Musk needs to be sent back to South Africa, but that's just me. And Democrats are attempting to do just that. Last night, Democratic senators staged an all-night session to protest Vogt's nomination, warning that his leadership would enable Donald to dismantle government funding mechanisms entirely. Take a look.
Democrats are in the middle of what they call a 30-hour effort to protest his nomination. They've been speaking on the Senate floor throughout the night and into this morning. Republicans on the Budget Committee voted unanimously last week to advance Vogt's nomination. Democrats boycotted it. Vogt is a co-author of Project 2025, who served as a platform policy director for the Republican National Committee. President Trump has previously referred to him as an aggressive cost cutter and deregulator who will help us implement our America First agenda across all agencies. That's a direct quote.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as America First. It's Donald and Elon first, and Vogt is all on board with that. Despite these efforts, of course, Republicans voted along party lines to advance Vogt's nomination, setting up a full Senate vote. Democrats insist, however, that the fight is far from over, and they would be right, because we are literally into day 17 here, so it better not be over. I'd prefer to think of it as they are just getting started, because honestly, this is the kind of action they really needed to be taking for every single one of Donald's nominees up to this point. Democrats across both chambers are deploying every available tool to block these moves. Senator Schatz is stalling all State Department nominees in response to Donald's foreign policy chaos, while progressive lawmakers are organizing public demonstrations outside government buildings targeted by Donald's sweeping budget cuts. This morning, the Congressional Caucus held a press conference calling for the public firing of Elon Musk. Let's take a look.
Well, I'll tell you right now, we are going to use every legislative, judicial, and public pressure tool at our disposal as members of Congress until we fire Elon Musk.
The richest man on the planet is engaging in an illegal power grab across our government. This is how he turned Twitter on its head, taking control of people, information, money, and buildings.
I went to the Treasury Department on Tuesday and joined with hundreds of other Americans and many of my colleagues here because an unelected billionaire gained access to Social Security numbers, bank account information, and personal data of millions of Americans.
I received, again, over 1,000 emails and calls this week demanding action. And that's why I introduced my first bill, the Stop Musk Act to protect federal workers who are at the forefront of Elon Musk's power grab.
Yeah, that's great.
And we will be at this every single day. Press conferences, protests, until the American people rise up and push back.
Through all of this, we are going to say to Elon Musk and his tech bros, enough is enough. Get out of our government.
Get out of our government. Get out of our fucking way. Yes, every day, every channel. Flood the media. Protest everywhere. Flood the courts. Drown them in paperwork. Stop this madness, or at least slow it down in any way you can, because I have to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure it can be stopped. That does not mean we do not try, however. One problem, of course, is, can you fire somebody who wasn't really hired in the first place? Elon Musk, unconfirmed, unauthorized, unelected, unhired, was essentially installed. Again, that does not mean we do not keep trying. Democrats continue to have their sights on Musk and called for an investigation through the United States House Oversight Committee into potential national security risks from Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. They urged inspectors general at multiple federal agencies, including Treasury, Education, and the SBA, to probe possible security breaches linked to Musk's team. Again, all to the good, all necessary, all vital to our having any chance whatsoever to slow all of this down. But we also need to contend with the reality that Republicans control everything, and there are limits to what we do. However, knowing that should only make us more creative in how we approach these very serious dangers to our country in a multidimensional, multifactorial way. It's clear that House Democrats are attempting to act quickly to stop Donald's power grab, but I think there's really one move that could flex their power, or, maybe be the end of everything. I'm going to let you be the judge of that, because Donald's power grab is about to slam into an unavoidable crisis, which is the U.S. has hit, or is about to hit, its borrowing limit. We go through this all the time, unfortunately, because there are certain things we just have not figured out yet. Like, I'm not entirely sure why there is a debt ceiling, but that's a conversation for another time. In the meantime, since there is a debt ceiling, Congress has to raise it, or, because this is retroactive, you have to raise the debt ceiling to pay already accrued debts. And if you do not raise the debt ceiling, the government, therefore, will default on its debts. Here's the problem, however. House Republicans do not have the votes, despite being in the majority, to do it alone. Why, ask you? Because their majority is very, very slim. They have a four-person majority, and there is a significant minority of Republicans who are so-called budget hawks, for lack of a better word, and will not raise the debt ceiling under any circumstances. So Democrats would have to cross over and vote with Speaker Johnson here. Donald's budget grabs and quite frankly, the fact that Speaker Mike Johnson has proven himself to be wholly unreliable as a negotiating partner have destroyed any trust Democrats have in bipartisan deals. If the debt ceiling isn't raised, Donald could seize control over which problems get funded, and that kind of puts us between Scylla and Charybdis, doesn't it? He could then prioritize defense and budget security while cutting Medicaid and Social Security, because that's where he plans to steal most of his money. This, of course, would be an unprecedented power grab, which would set a stage for yet another constitutional crisis, or maybe it would just add to the one we're already in, over who controls government spending, Congress or Donald. And again, I do think that's just an extension of where we are. We already are in that particular constitutional crisis, because in many, many ways, as we've seen over the last 17 days, Elon Musk has taken authority of budgetary matters into his own hands, overriding Congress. Democrats could negotiate, but why again would they trust Donald or any Republicans in the House to honor a deal when Donald is already illegal, has already been illegally freezing funds, and again, Mike Johnson has proven himself to be a complete traitor to any deal that has been reached. So, what is the way forward here? We're going to have to see what Democrats come up with, but I honestly think they need to be willing to go to the edge here. They need to be willing to go to the edge because there is literally nothing else that can stop this. And quite frankly, it is the only leverage they have. For decades, Republicans have weaponized the debt ceiling in order to strong on Democrats into spending deep spending cuts, even when they're in the minority. Democrats should take a page out of that playbook. But now as the national debt hits its legal limit of $31.4 trillion, which I'm guessing is the amount of money Elon Musk needs to possess himself in order to feel like he has any worth as a human being, Democrats could see an opening to turn the tables, which, again, is exactly what they should do. This time, using the debt ceiling as leverage to curb Donald's sweeping power grabs, dismantle his radical agenda, and put House Republicans, including and especially Speaker Mike Johnson, on notice. They're making clear already, that is, Democrats led by Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, that they will not agree to a debt ceiling hike without major concessions, including the reversal of Donald's executive orders, protections for federal workers, and for some, the outright elimination of the debt ceiling as a bargaining chip in future administrations, which is something that should have happened years ago, especially when Democrats had control of everything. As Representative Brendan Boyle, Democrat of Pennsylvania, who's a top Democrat on the House Budget Committee, put it, quote, "The days of Democrats simply voting to raise the debt ceiling under a Republican president are over. If we're voting for an increase, it must come with real protections for social programs and a permanent end to this manufactured crisis," unquote. Democratic leaders are ramping up their resistance, but they're not the only ones. Americans are flooding the Senate offices with phone calls, which is crashing phone lines and filling up voicemail boxes. Okay, by the way, if your call goes to voicemail or worse, doesn't get answered, here's what you need to do. You need to write a letter, an old-fashioned, with a pen on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, address the envelope, put a stamp on the envelope, and send it to your senator's office in DC and in your state. Why? Because it's easy to ignore a full voicemail inbox. What's less easy to ignore are massive mailbags full of mail from your constituents. It makes a difference, I promise you. Also, as we saw yesterday, protests are happening in cities across the country. People are taking to the streets to oppose Donald Musk and Project 2025. Here's a clip.
This was Austin, Texas today. Thousands of people marching through downtown Austin, Texas, ultimately converging on the state capitol today. The Austin American-Statesman reports that it was so loud outside that it was loud inside the Capitol building. People who participated in this protest today in Austin, Texas, said as the march wound its way around the Capitol and through downtown, people in Austin just started flooding out of the buildings along the route of the march and joining the march. And this was Olympia, Washington today. This was Richmond, Virginia today. This was Trenton, New Jersey today. Columbia, South Carolina. This was Sacramento. Look at this. This was Sacramento, California today. Look at that. Phoenix in Arizona, which is, of course, the site of the state capitol. But Arizona was one of many states today where people didn't only demonstrate at the state capitol. Arizona also, for example, had a pretty significant protest turnout in Tucson. Similarly, Pennsylvania is a state where, yes, people protested at the state capitol today in Harrisburg, but people also turned out protesting today in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia in large numbers as well. And I could go on. There were protests absolutely all over the country today.
That is extraordinarily heartened, and we should all be heartened by it because we are just at the beginning of this as American citizens in the sense that It's sometimes difficult to know what to protest before the horrors have begun. So I was really glad to see that so many protests were successful yesterday. And there were protests everywhere. Some of them were smaller, but that's again because we're at the beginning of this. This is a movement that is going to grow, it is going to expand, it is going to become unstoppable, and it is going to become something that even the fascists running this regime will not be able to ignore. So stand fast. Do not be threatened. Do not let them intimidate you. As long as we stand together, we will stand. Thank you. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.